right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. Welcome to the Wanda Coleman Theater. My name is Quentin Ring. I'm Beyond Baroque's Executive Director, and this is the final reading of the 2024 Southern California Poetry Festival. It's been a great weekend. When we get to these readings at the end of the festival, it always feels like we've just finished a little bit of a marathon, but it's been an absolute blast. We've had an incredible array of programs over the past several days, all kinds of wonderful people passing through, and some really fantastic poets. But for this final reading, we have something very special. We have a reading with 4 fantastic California poets: David St. John, Sara Borjas, Allison Hedge Coke, and Lee Herrick. We're really looking forward to sort of having this be the capstone on the weekend. Before we get started, though, I did want to say a few words about Beyond Baroque. First, we think it's important to begin by acknowledging our presence here on unceded territory. This is Tongva lands. We acknowledge the wrong done to indigenous peoples through settler colonialism, genocidal practices, and the violent dispossession of their lands. And as an arts organization, Beyond Baroque is committed to uplifting indigenous writers, communities, their narratives, and their art. This entire festival over the course of the weekend, barring Friday, was free. We also support writers and poets through readings, workshops, as well as having a bookstore throughout the year. Most of our programs throughout the year are free. We haven't been doing a lot of fundraising pitches during this festival, but here at the end, I did want to encourage everybody to support the work we do. We really try to maintain the space, make it as accessible as possible for the community. We try to pay writers. And we try just to support poetry both here and now and in the long term as well by nurturing writers in their development. So if you're able to become a member tonight, it would be hugely important to us, and we'd be very grateful. It costs as little as $60 if you're for an individual membership. $80 is a dual membership. Those will be going up soon, those rates. And so you can see Genesis in the bookstore about becoming a member. You can also just straight up make a donation as well. Anything you can provide helps us continue to put on these events for free throughout the year, and especially this festival. But I think we should just go ahead and get into the program a little bit. We sort of had a little debate about how we wanted to finish the festival, and we really just decided we wanted to focus on California a little bit. There's such a huge diversity of poets and poetry in the state, and there's no way to represent that at all. But we just decided to gather a group of California poets we really enjoyed. Oddly enough, and I'm hoping that our guests can speak this a little bit. Several of them are from Fresno, and this has long interested me. Like, what is in the water in Fresno? Because I love Los Angeles, but I feel like per capita, Fresno might have the best poetry output in the state, if not the country. I'm just saying. So it could be a California poet reading, it could be a Fresno reading. You can take it as you like. But anyways, to get into it, and I should also say one more thing, and it's not because I don't appreciate it. Our staff has put in so much work into this festival. I really want to shout out especially Jimmy Vega, our associate director, and Yvonne Salinas, our programs manager. Huge amount of work. Eric Alberg and Leon Rubenhold in the booth, Genesis Perez, Rhiannon Chavez, Nick Foreman, and all of our volunteers as well. I actually got sick and couldn't even be here for the first night of the festival. That would have been unimaginable to me a few years ago before we built this incredible staff. And so I'm truly grateful to all of you for doing all of this. So let's get into the readings. First up, we have David St. John, who's the author of 12 collection of poetry as well as a prose volume, Where the Angels Come Toward Us. He is also professor of English and comparative literature at the University of Southern California. I associate him with being from Los Angeles. He is actually from Fresno.
Well, it's so terrific to be here with all of my Fresno folk. I can tell you how it began. And that's because Philip Levine had a fellowship to Stanford. And he didn't hate it entirely, but he had a son who was very asthmatic, dangerously asthmatic. And so he began to look around in California. He wanted to stay in California. He didn't want to go back to Detroit. And a job came up in Fresno. And so they came down, and this was in the 50s. And he took the job at Fresno, and then his friend Robert Mezzi came to join him. But because he knew so many poets around the country, he began inviting them to come read. When I was a student there in 1912, it was extraordinary. Adrienne Rich came. I met her when I was 18, and for complicated reasons, she remained a lifelong friend. It was the range of poets, the sort of, Cannell, Merwin, Strand. It was a really interesting time. But when I went to Fresno State and I was 18, the first poet I met was the poet Larry Levis. And Larry was a senior in college there. And I met him because I'll make this, and don't make anything quick, so I'm sorry. But I looked at the course schedules in English, and the very last, this was 1967, I want you to remember. I looked, and the very last course listed was Cross-Cultural Expressions of Contemporary Man. And I'm like, that's my class. I'm going to that class. And what I didn't know was that it was a class only for seniors at Fresno State. But I went, and Jose Elgorriaga, great translator from the Spanish with Levine, was teaching the class. And I knew somebody in the class, and they decided to let me stay. But in the class were the two editors of the college literary magazine, Bruce Boston and Larry Levis. And Larry then went off to teach first to Syracuse to get an MFA. Then he taught in Los Angeles. Not too many people know this. At Cal State LA for 2 years. And it's there he befriended the great Polish poet Zbigniew Herbert, and they became friends. I ended up going to the University of Iowa the same year that Larry went to Iowa to get a PhD, because at Cal State LA, they told him, you can't stay here unless you have a PhD. And that was how it was back then. Larry became my closest friend in or out of poetry. And during the years that we were at Iowa, there came a point where his marriage split up and he moved in with me. So we actually were living together. And then we stayed, of course, in close touch all those years after. Well, the first poem I want to read is about Larry, and at times, there have been times when I haven't actually been able to read this poem. And it's called The One Who Should Write My Elegy Is Dead. The one who should write my elegy is dead. When we made that bet, he said most likely I'd be the loser, writing his elegy instead. Nothing is as beautiful as nothing, he once said. So hip, just chain-smoking camels, riding his shaky triumph up Van Ness. And the one who should write my elegy is dead. I guess I always knew I'd have to write my own elegy for him instead. Rambo on a tractor, Anna said, or Jagger pirouetting through the ranch's drying shed. The one who should write my elegy is dead. So I won't rehearse again those hungers that we fed or expose, both the cruelties and those we shared. I'll simply try to finish writing this last elegy instead of looking back. And tonight, my daughter Vivian's off with friends, and Anna's reading of all things, winter stars in bed. And the one who should write my elegy is dead. And I'm the one, the loser, left here just as he said I'd be left here, writing his elegy instead. I'm only going to read a few poems, but they're about 30 pages long. So I want to read another Fresno poem, another elegy. This is for my friend Roberta Spear, who also died young. And it's set in Academy, California, and the Fresnos know. Academy, it has a literary resonance because Levine has a very famous poem called At the Cemetery at Academy, California. And it's relevant because Bob Mezzie's wife, Ollie Simpson, grew up on a farm right there, where there are actually things there now, but for many years there were just open meadows along the road going up to the Sierras and along Toll House Road. And Levine's poem is an extraordinary poem because Ollie, as a young woman, is taking him out to the cemetery right near her home, showing him all of the gravestones going back into the 1800s and saying, I will go there. This is called Late Farewells. Now that we have at last entered this doorway, step through each page exactly as if you were your own grieving ghost. The change of weather begins again, she said, of the rain approaching across sibilant skies, allowing us to believe a few last branches of memory sway lately, as quietly as the few seasons we have left to live. My reticence is about forgiveness and solitude, perhaps remorse. Let my silence be moral and mortal too. After all, her letters recalled, I always said I was hard to love, but I wish you'd fought a little harder for me. And next time you might find someone easier. I mean, someone not a tsunami of hopes, not your own grieving ghost. I don't want you to think you know me. I want you to think one day you might know me, even if now you're still unsure. And if one day things don't seem quite right, stop a moment where you're waiting and look. Look. It's my own shadow leaving your book split by light. And this is the last poem I'm going to read, and this is the title poem of this new book called Prayer for My Daughter. Yeats has a very famous poem called Prayer for My Daughter that he writes right at the beginning of the Irish Civil War. And the epigraph to this book is the first line of that poem, which is, "Once more the storm is howling." And he's writing this in the tower that he lived in for part of the year each year. And his daughter, Anne, has just been born 2 days before. And that storm he's referring to is not only the storm of the weather, but also the storm, of course, of the Irish Civil War, which at this point he knew would be bloody. What prayer becomes me now, as these times darken daily, until sons and daughters grow as fragile as the wind along these ever-altering surfaces of a world ripping apart? And whose fault, really, this sorrowing of fathers, drawing only maps of their own fears, as whole cities begin darkening in ash? Shadows as uncertain as Blake's own wild, consumptive city by the Thames. And as Vivian and I walked those mornings by the Pacific, along the Venice boardwalk, talking, looking out past the ocean, beyond waves, barely holding the horizon, and I knew I could never make clear my thanks for how she'd stood her ground those times I dragged my wreckage through the house, as she, with forbearance and humor, helped me take my time to find safe harbor. She who'd lived those impossible years, 12 to 17, in a town of old and new angels, their drugs and nightmares, the friend who'd slashed herself and bled out, or the boy who'd stepped onto his family's fifth-story terrace and a few steps beyond, embracing an ending of a life he felt already past repair. And soon, across her body, new tattoos like elegant illuminations of some Victorian screen unfolding, inscriptions of inked cursive, words like fire walking, flaring, as she began turning away from old friends who defined the closing perimeter of a vortex she'd left, refusing to acquiesce to a killing dark as she rose free. And I think how young she is to know, and how long it took her father to choose light over dark. And one night, listening to her DJ, her radio show at midnight, I heard her play Leadbelly singing, "Where Did You Sleep Last Night?" a song I'd thought she'd known only from Nirvana, and then a Hendrix 12-string acoustic bootleg, then Bessie Smith songs I had no idea she knew and loved, living up in Arcata between the redwoods and the sea, where she'd grown singular and strong in the solace of herself while building her own Arcadia. As the prayer I might once have hoped to send into the storm became this belated song, owing its life to her grace and tolerance, arising now as simply as then, with music playing between the redwoods and the sea. Thank you.
Another round of applause for David St. John, please. Thank you, David. Up next, we have Sara Borjas, who is a Chicanx Pocha from Turtle Island before it was stolen and its people were genocided and colonized. She is a Fresno poet. George Floyd, Delana Ashley Yan Gonzalez, Heba Abu Nada, Xiao Jie Tan, Rafat Alarir say their names. Her debut collection of poetry, Heart Like a Window, Mouth Like a Cliff, was published by Nome Press in 2019 and won a 2020 American Book Award. Sara has received fellowships from MacDowell, Canto Mundo, the Poetry Foundation, and others. Her work can be found in Agni, To Have Never Risked Our Lives, a portfolio of Central American and Mexican diaspora writing, The Rumpus, the Gettysburg Review, Poem a Day, Alta, and The Offing. She teaches innovative undergraduates at CSU East Bay, believes that all Black lives matter and all Palestinian lives matter, and will resist white supremacy and settler colonialism until Black liberation is realized and Palestine is free. Sara lives in Oakland and stays rooted in Fresno. Please, everyone, welcome Sara Borjas.
Hello. Welcome to the Fresno poetry reading. No, I'm just kidding. We just like to be extra when we can. Dude, look at my sticker though. Can't we calm down? No, we can't. So, yeah, it is what it is. I'm gonna read 4 poems, and I had never been camping until I met my partner, because my mom's like, I'm not trying to sleep on the dirt again. And so that shit's hella real. Yeah, so we went so now I'm like really into camping. You see my vest, like I'm really into camping. I also live in the Bay, so it's also this vest. But we were camping, and my partner taught me to play backgammon. And backgammon's kind of hard because it's math-y a little bit, especially if you're drinking. So he was being mean to me at the game, and I was like, I'm gonna write a poem about you and go read it everywhere. So this is that poem. It's called There's an Animosity Ignited Inside Me. There is an animosity ignited inside me, and my husband hates me. He never lets me win any games. When he reads Thich Nhat Hanh, he looks free, and I want it. He adores mezcal and wooden abstract figures, but mostly it's the birds that he follows all day. My husband talks sweetly to animals, ravens, crows, his simple and brief friends. He says it's how I was raised, why I cheat at games. I attach. I am too attached. That's why he hates me. That's why I play with him. Take that, husband. I was kidding. This next poem, I'm so excited to read because I am such a huge fan of David St. John, and it's the first time like I'm ever reading with David St. John, and sorry, but I'm like so losing it right now inside. David, like, hush, turn me out, the book and the title poem. And actually last week I was visiting my sister at Virginia Tech. She goes there, she's getting MFA, and I saw Hush at a bookstore, and I was like, bitch, read this, and left her with it. And I just, man, yeah, I just felt really understood by David's work. And so this is a poem after David's poem, Iris. And it's called I Know the Name of the Desert. There is a desert inside my mother's iris, a flesh-colored truck rambling through miles of packed dirt, where my grandmother is leaving my grandfather, driving away with all his kids. Dirt rises and fails along a road in El Paso. Sand freckles underneath tires. 8 small hands wring like rags. My grandma reaches across the cab over 3 of her daughters to slap my mother across her face. She calls her tortilla quemada, carda de mierda, because she has my grandfather's big teeth, wide canyon mouth, cheeks like hot, empty plains. My mother would rather cut off her hands than hit me. She would rather swallow box Chardonnay, open her throat like a rusty silo for rain, light a candle for a girl she knows, and turn this evening into a watermelon sliced, a rest stop where she is allowed to play. In her iris, there is a desert. There's a girl who does not cry, a woman who wonders what she did wrong. I'm a daughter who walks through a desert carrying my mother's wounds, each open palm across her child's face. Each time a man offered her something he did not have. I trudge a lineage of exiled desire, thirsty. I love my mother by drinking her cheap wine with her. I bend down in the sand. I lap my own sinking steps. Yeah, so thank you, David. Thank you, David. And also on some Fresno stuff. I'm gonna read Ars Poetica. I was not trying to be a poet. I was trying to go to law school, and then I took a poetry workshop with Juan Luis Guzman, And I was writing sonnets in like Elizabethan English, and Juan was like, keep going, girlfriend, like, good job. And I was like, what? But I just needed like a little bit of validation to like center my own imagination and like my own time and my own labor. And I didn't know about the Fresno poets till way, way, way later. But I remember always being asked, what about this person, what about this person, this person, and me being like, always kind of feeling a little like unlearned, and also like I was breaking into something, and also like I didn't belong there, even in the Fresno canon, because I didn't know the Fresno poets. And I remember one time my cousin, who was also a poet, Joseph Rios, was like, I told him I had never read The Ice Worker Sings, and he was like, don't ever tell anybody that. I was like, what? What did you say to me? I don't like that. So then I went and wrote this poem to talk shit on him for trying to shame me for not reading The Ice Worker Sings, but it ended up being one of my like favorite poems because it really helped me process a lot of what I'm up to in poems. So this is for Joseph, wherever you're at. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I was going to try it out at open mic, and he showed up. I know, and I was like, fuck. So I was like, before I went up, I said, hey, just so you know, I wrote a poem. It is about you. And you'll see, but Alarista makes an appearance, but in the original, I put Alturista. And when I sat down, he goes, it's Alarista, fool. So I got, I got checked. It's all good though. Ars Poetica. In my Fresno, there are no prerequisites, just a frontage road inside the fence flopped to the west. Craft means white aesthetics, and the canons are obsolete, extinct. Anyone charging admission is an endangered gatekeeper playing dress up with polo shirts. Here, poets rest between crop rows welting the earth's still dust like corduroy. Craft is a twisted grapevine and a swirling fly. On one side, almond trees, pistachios, field worker housing spray painted with ads. The fervent recall of history from poets in the tradition hovers in the moment the door opens, calling down some half-lit hallway, clinging to the master's house like an old dog. There is an ocean eventually. I did not read The Ice Worker Sings before I was a poet. I'm saying it now. I did not even believe some poems. I will not praise the poems about how sex with a prostitute can clear some cochino path to male enlightenment, or that confessing I can hear the brown and black whores calling my name vindicates a Chicano's colonized mind. Although I tried to love once and ended up punching everybody is one of my favorite lines from Fresno. You see, on the other side of my Fresno is orange groves and aqueducts and hills evolving into a majestic mattering. The view from the mountains is trucks, dogs, oldies, dusk. I do not believe Andres Montoya wanted his book to operate as a fence or a container. I cannot recite the lines of Alarista at a party or at the dean's annual diversity dinner, but I was a poet before the books. Fresno is not a machine. It does not produce tenderness from the oppressed, from the farm worker, the housewife, the newly educated Chicano, like cotton gins or dive bars or Morrissey lyrics. Here there are as many songs as silences, piled deep into soil until it becomes rock. Latinos beautiful as a basket of eyelashes, our eyes full as the packed back of a pickup. I can be kind through my anger and my intense hope, cracked windshields. I can be honest as strawberry paletas or water feeding the lawn all day long. I can show you my wounds, each candle my mother lights before she drinks alone, my father's machismo, and my struggle to say I am guilty of both, my stubborn and revolving logic. Each time I admit I want or deserve a name of my choice, my breath has to throw down with its ancestral stutter. These poetics are the Sanchas of Duende that no one acknowledges, and the aunts that gossip over the landline. The alfalfa field remains mysterious. The junk in the yards is as blinding as light breaking into the crest of the Nevadas. But I'm not a genealogist. I do not love certainty. I do not enjoy loyalty. If you ask me, Larry Levis owes my grandma's denial for teaching him to meander. I'm not the scholar of the crop row, the unsung corrido of Pinedale, the historian of hoods or philosopher of feral cats and packing houses. I am not an inheritor. I'm a chatty tradition pushing from the inside of its tin. I am the scrape of the lowrider as it exits the driveway, bothering the neighbors. I am the ambitious orange head of the kinglet, raising questions from ash trees. Thank you all. And I'll leave you with this last poem. I watched the documentary on Netflix, and I got excited. But these folks, Homo naledi, were a species that, like they found, had been ceremonializing death and burying their dead with tools, tens of thousands of years before we initially believed. And I was really inspired. So it's called Homo naledi. Homo naledi place a stone in their dead's hand to carve the next world, the sacred parts. I've acquired no daughters or money, no new ideas. And someone stole my Hyundai this past February in Oakland. I want to bear something beautiful, but I'm juggling 7 incomplete futures. A down payment for a house, straight marriage to a man, knowing better but doing it anyways, my romantic admiration for women, DEI committees, and my mother, who she might have become had I stayed inside. I reach for futurity and end up with my grip on a centuries-old wound there at the back of my heart. A fine, sharp stone, my delicate, decolonial tool. Do you ever wonder if free and lost are the same disconnection? What can I hold in this life to stay sacred, to matter, even as I fight dogmas that promise I don't? I want the oppressors to find my body and be reminded I was never scared to sleep, that I still loved my struggle and managed to get my nails done, having felt cute and died before deleting. I want my hopelessness in coloniality, my amusement with the temporary power of white people and men, riddled across my tireless, clutching hands. I want the colonizers mystified at how I dug with rubble this far. I want them to grow sick from studying me. Thank you, everyone.
Sara Borjas, everybody. We had Joseph here earlier this year. I kind of want to get more about the family drama. Yeah. Next up, we have Allison Hedge Coke, who is a Fulbright scholar, first Jade-nurtured Si-Hui Female International Poetry Award recipient, recent Dan and Maggie Inouye Distinguished Chair in Democratic Ideals, and U.S. Library of Congress Witter-Binner Fellow. She has written several books of poetry, 1 book of nonfiction, and a play. Following former field worker retraining in Santa Paula and Ventura in the mid-1980s, she began teaching and is now a distinguished professor of creative writing at the University of California, Riverside. Hedge Coke is the editor of 10 anthologies and has served as an editor and guest editor for several journals, including World Literature Today. She most recently directed UCR's Writers' Week, the Along Chaparral Puawaina Project, and the Sandhill Crane Migration Retreat and Festival. You can tell she's a very strong writer because I think she's the only one here who's escaped the gravitational pull of Fresno, to my knowledge. So please, everyone, welcome Allison Hedge Coke.
So not quite escaped. I spent 6 months there with some passing love. So shout out to Carol Maldell in the audience, and such a privilege to read with David tonight, and Sara and Lee. This is for my granddaughter Hazel. Look at this blue, Circe's blue butterfly from the sand dunes of San Francisco, the first known American butterfly to become extinct due to humans, first known. It's all going to burn, says the man accused of setting holy fire. First the puma in Santa Paula palm branch, then coyote, fox, rabbits appear. Birds overcome sky, plume. Then the entire yard is a carpet of undulating fleas, so thick wrapping bread bags over our feet and ankles barely made it passable. Everything escaping heat in the fire-stormed arson, 120,000 acres blanket-fired, Los Padres National Forest and more, choking like the child they found, still hung there. Sleep in the dream, a bettering world. Sleep in the dream, nightmare woken. What we carry howls, boggling. Her cheek contorts in flame, unfanned yet fanning. She eclipses all asunder, all broken. Scar-face vision and temporal melt. Somewhere on my left face, you can still see where it was sewn back on. On the right, the line across the eyelid, where it was sewn back. On the abdomen, the lines where it was sewn back, somewhere on my right hand where it was sewn, all the heres and theres were sewn, all the biopsies, removals, explorations, and assaults sewn. What we carry weeps wet-haired. Her cheek contorts when sprayed by guard, and from the first time she attempted, her neck ached. Meanwhile, here, a third body is found in Baldwin Hills fire. There are more missing. It's arson again. Someone is out there. Look at this blue. Palo Verdes blue, from the Palo Verdes Peninsula, one of the best claims to being the world's rarest butterfly, first thought extinct by development. The newly returned lays eggs on deerweed. Notice the patterning on the underside of her wing. Trigger turned to my face, every right to bear bitter, every night scheme, daybreak flash. There's no need to fictionalize this dude. He is what he is, what man made, what man. Sliced first somewhere mid-20s, missing children, women taken somewhere. And for me, it was a gully, a pond, a base, a van, a hall, a window. Remember along the way the murdered sow bear. Her cubs were taking for claws, and we're all just symptoms of something massive, faster over there, killing us. Weaponizing nature, sanctifying arms, consecrating each trigger-flexed hand. Dad was in his 80s up on the trailer, a roof sprayer in his hand, fighting back Santa Paula ignition, not leaving until everyone leaves. Or the time that he battled out of being rolled. He just smoothly turned his cane horizontally, asking the punks who should join him when he dies soon enough, until they scrambled across the Kmart parking lot. Riverside, reaching back for a slip skateboard. He was hit so hard he flew while braking. A crow above, whose wings were sunning, swooped at the same time. The car careened to a halt on Martin Luther King Road near Boardwell Park, East Side, where the speed limit suddenly increased while approaching two close crosswalks leading to homes from Stratton Community Center, Emerson Elementary, Boardwell, East Side, Black, brown, kids, and elders. Anyone can see. Someone once worked this out. Look at this blue. Mission Blue Butterfly, from coastal chaparral and grasslands, the Mission District, San Francisco, Twin Peaks, Marin County, most up upon San Bruno Mountain, the small, delicate, gossamer-winged male iridescent blue lavender, the female dark brown blue base, fringed in long, white, hair-like scales. The undersides are spotted. The wing spread is 1 to 1.5 inches wide. The caterpillars solely ingest native California lupine. They eat silver summer varicolor lupine. The adults drink flower nectar and buckwheat, golden aster, wild hyacinth, endangered first by development. Public infrastructure development projects remain her significant threat. Hidden Lake blue curls from Hidden Lake, San Jacinto's Riverside County on the shores of a single vernal pool. Look at this blue ephemeral trampling by hikers, sightseekers endangered, each flower a hairy calyx with pointed sepals and tubular corona. 50 flowers might fit on a penny. A member of the mint family. Delisting, the seeds are stored in seed bank, still vulnerable. Beautiful boy, made to eat cat feces and vomit. pepper sprayed, made to live in a cabinet box, bound and gagged at 8 because you might be gay. Beautiful child taken at 10, beaten, tortured, malnourished, whose mother, father tore into, pummeled for coming out, for coming out. Look at this blue, the mutant blue-eyed coyotes, the chance mutation, the baby blues and dying coyote suggest proliferation. They're silvery, brown-backed with icy blue eyes, the antenna ears turning satellite-like, hearing voles, Santa Cruz, Sacramento, Point Reyes. Their apex predators, mostly wolves, mountain lions, are killed by humans, but here they're thriving, hunting, blue-eyed, chance mutation. Here in the shadows, leaves keep life close to us, fruit, the taste of it. Dusk following plant rows around the crates, the comfort here of home. There's nothing like a bed under the stars when we need it. Gleam now in rain slickening, a royal willow branch as blue elderberry summon wind, the Santa Ana's tangle reason, the still leaves night, and bang by owl wing, here hammocked over, oasis, watering life, the rocks form mouths pre-dawn calling, deep in night, the corded sky ropes tug through our visceral root, harness our reckoning, throttle to timber, thrum, strum, pluck gut sleeve, and kindle fiddle full belly, the flourishing poppies as quarter notes, spiral double helix, high above California fan palms, until stars are born. On Harupa, the bike laid flat, crushed out up against a curb, just below his awkwardly posed corpse. It was the sense of it, something crude, a twisting limb, thrusting rigid, blue, spread out in some complex tangle, unnatural, undersigned for a child care center feet away from his fall. He must have flipped there, over handlebars, like a child might, striking the concrete too fast, too hard, then maybe a heart attack, maybe assaulted, begged for mercy, mercy, mercy. Whoa, mercy, mercy me. Perforating his heart, lung, and liver. The Los Angeles County coroner said he was shot twice. Mercy. Whoa. In the bus, on the way to retraining for field workers, we left Santa Paula for Ventura daily, rhododendron, eucalyptus, liminaria, orange groves, and peppers, the flowers for Burpee Seed Company, red-winged hawks every mile of eucalyptus, 126 Ventura Freeway on watch, like us, for movements. X, Santa Paula, the North Star of Guanajuato, the Mupu of Shumash. We escaped here, refugees. Behind us was Liminaria, a town of a camp, now some suburbia development, but then all sorts of workers and growers, Rancho Cespi, Flores y Cantos, La Lucha we would go, Santa Paula, Fillmore, Piru, Oxnard Strawberries, Satakoy Records, Ventura Gold Beaches, and hot peppers shouldering Blood Alley Ventura Freeway 126 with oleanders, eucalyptus, rhododendron. I came from camps, not these, but I served these children. Decades ago, when Olive Land's 7-year-old girl wrote, "My eyes are the green of August," and I still see her eyes, her August now. Your palms know where to go. What they imagine leads you. Everything we muster moves us along. Like water mirrors itself and remembers where to flow, how to go there. In the dream you follow. In the dream we fly over all of this. Direness. We float vaquitas, we move like smallest porpoises, undulating in air like swimming, arms tight against our sides, California spread below us, manzanitas gleaming in the sun. Stars ahead in darkness await our time there. For now, it's the offering we make. In a world fast shaking herself loose from diabolical torrent, rising throttled song above the throttled breath choked out between calligraphies. The madness clenches fury, unfurls release, misery met in each pummeled break. It's not over. Joshua trees were the first vandalized during the shutdown. National Park defunding. Donald Trump is literally destroying America. Bill Prady, let love lead, take heart. Earth hears every tremble, touch, and feels each footstep, listens to you now. Bring her justice, protection, peace. Thank you.
Allison Hedge Coke, everyone. Yes. And for our final reader of the Southern California Poetry Festival, I think it is really wonderful and appropriate that we have Lee Herrick, who is the California Poet Laureate. He's the author of 4 books of poems in praise of late wonder, new and selected poems, Scar and Flower, finalist for the 2020 Northern California Book Award, Gardening Secrets of the Dead, and This Many Miles from Desire. He is co-editor of The World I Leave You, Asian American Poets on Faith and Spirit, and Afterlives, an Agni portfolio of Asian adoptee diaspora writing. His poems appear widely in the Poetry Foundation, Academy of American Poets, The Place That Inhabits Us, poems from San Francisco Bay Watershed, Indivisible, poems of social justice with a foreword by Common, Here, Poems for the Planet, and Dear America, Letters of Hope, Habitat, Defiance, and Democracy, among others. Herrick serves on the advisory board of Terrain.org and 16 Rivers Press. He co-founded Lit Hop in Fresno. We're very excited to welcome him here to Beyond Baroque. Please, everybody, welcome Lee Herrick.
Gosh. Thank you, Quentin. And yeah, to everyone here at Beyond Baroque for having me and for everything you do. I don't know what kind of strange universe we're in when I read after Allison and David, but here we are. But it's really a thrill. Oh, I could listen to you all night, Sara. I was so inspired by listening to David talk about Fresno poets, and I don't think I've ever really talked about Fresno poets at a reading like this, unless it's, you know, a panel specifically for something related to Fresno poetry. But I do want to say, and listening to Sara talk about Joseph, maybe I'll just add a couple of things. It actually was in an essay in a book that Chris Buckley edited called, I think it's called Naming the Lost, where I think South Korea made me human and Fresno made me a poet. I was just starting out. I moved to Fresno in 1997 and was just starting to get serious about writing. And the first poet I met was Andres Montoya, who I realized a lot of people never met or didn't know. Kind of the lore and the prize and and all of the stories. But Andres was a powerful, powerful person, flawed like all of us, but a dear friend before he passed. And then I saw Adrienne Rich and Phil Levine at the Tower Theater and was changed forever. I'll never forget that reading. Meeting Juan Felipe Herrera early on, it's just a gift. And you know, I tell you, sometimes I'm asked what it's like serving as California Poet Laureate. It's very humbling. I mean, there's so many great poets in this state doing incredible work. But I just sum it up by saying it's been a joy. I mean, there are moments of, I sort of wonder how this is happening, you know, but the governor's mansion is not my typical hangout, but, you know, being right, oh, there's Gavin Newsom. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, a lot of readings, a lot of travel up and down the state, festivals, museums, schools, prisons, and as I like to say, they're Californians too. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and get to it. I think I'm going to read about 5 or 6 poems, and I'll just say a little bit that I hope will inform at least some of them, and that is that I was born in Korea and adopted when I was about 10 months old. I don't know my exact birth date, and transnational adoptees know this is a pretty common experience, but I know it was sometime in late 1970. I was adopted to the Bay Area where I grew up before I moved to Modesto and then Fresno. But I grew up in Danville in the East Bay, a little town. Never met my birth parents, and I think that's good. Was that a really abrupt end to that story? I'm sorry. So these are all new poems from this book. Just came out in September. Okay, acclamation. My first language was the ocean. It sounded like my first mother's body. Wave, storm, vanish. I love what wind does to the trees. I want nature to move me like that. My name is a song. In it, there are horses fed by a man who says, I feel American when I kill a row of ants and say they asked for it. We are this many miles from desire. We are immigrant turned imperialist. I love what wind does to the bay. Wave to me. Smile at me like you know my name, like you love the ocean too, or at least the way I glisten in the moonlight. All right. I don't know why I enjoy reading this one, but I'm going to read this. 10 statements for the committee. 1, if I were to believe my education and my media, I was erasure after erasure until I was almost erased. 2, I feel American listening to A Tribe Called Quest or Yeah, Yeah, Yeahs more than any Bruce Springsteen song. 3, that is to say birthright, that is to say imperial, that is to say violence and coup is when I feel sadness filling up my mouth. 4, I'm tired of Hollywood white heroism. 5, in my Hollywood, it so happens the main character can be 2 things at once, Asian and heroic. 6, I've seen thousands of brown people saving the day. 7, I was born in Korea and adapted. 8, what we need, we've always had, the museums inside of us. 9, in the end, farmers and librarians will save us. 10, meet me in the field or the library. I'll wait for you. Thank you. So, Hollywood, maybe I'll continue. Hollywood doesn't get anything right, really, including adoptees. We're either, a serial killer or a superhero. A good friend of mine's writing a book about adoption tropes in Hollywood. So anyway, this poem mentions that idea just briefly, but this is more of a lyric thing, I think. Sorry. And I just have to say, I'm sorry. People down here are like, fuck, we're tired of hearing about Fresno. But I just want to say one last time, it's pretty cool reading with David and Sara. Ideed is here, the great Alice. I know. Oh, God. Adoption. Adoption is a wildfire, glass lake, steep mountain. Adopt, adapt, adaptation, adoption, adopted, adoptee, adulation, adoration, adult, adept, adopter, adoptive, adopt a pet, adopt a textbook, readopt, Hollywood adoption distortion, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Superman, Annie, The Jerk, Punky Brewster, and Margot, Edith, and Agnes from Despicable Me, Meme, Memory, Magically, Mystery, We Who Miss, We Who Magic, We Who Breathe So Deep Like This. To remember is to become wholly functional again, to join the group again, to rebody, to memoir, to recreate, to reverse, to recollect, to remind, to resist, rehabilitate, recover, reestablish, reform. To write is to form again, establish again, exist again. Adoption is to mind again, verse again, to build, store, create, and live again. Okay. Just gonna read a couple more. I think I'll read the title poem of this. In Praise of Late Wonder. I've wondered what my Korean mother's voice sounded like when I was born. Was it gasp, hiss, or flag in light wind? I've wondered if she kissed me before I became a wind, a white noise in blue sky. I've wondered lately about joy, butterfly, hummingbird, angels so full of bliss they almost sing. I imagine some of this relates to the orphan I was, the adopted boys and girls like me, all diaspora and alarm. I've wondered if I'm made of smoke and fire, sometimes clear sky, sometimes quiet storm. I've wondered lately how the acoustic guitar keeps its secrets, makes me float a little higher. How could I not love looking at the stars? All right. Okay, now two more. This is a couple of sonnets. I guess it's changed. The world is changing rapidly. It always feels like it's changing rapidly. And I was thinking a lot about sounds. I realized after taking a test that I have a hearing and like a neurological condition, which growing up I always knew I had, but I just thought I was a little different. But as an adoptee, I never had access to my medical records. So you know how they ask you, does it run in your family? You know, I could never say, but I found out I have this hearing thing. And so this poem was just trying to think about sound and memory. It's how I reclaim a lot, you know, not knowing much about family or ancestry or history. Sound and poetry for me has become a mechanism for reclamation. And so this is called Partial Crown in Praise of Absent Sounds. I want the fax machine, the dot matrix buzzsaw of news across the wire, the young woman's lisp and fire during solo moonlight road trips, the shuffle of predictable card tricks, the acoustic chord like sweet desire, the rotary dial and pronunciation error. When I say absent sounds, I mean typewriter key as much as Anyo or Ye, the 8-track plunk as much as Korean vowels, drawn out at the end like a plain blue sky. I want to know the way home. There's not much more I need. Home. There's not much more I need except to know how much blue sky there is from here to you. Why I sometimes hear your voice, freed, wild, true. Please, take the lead. At times, I thought I was going to die. At times, fire. At other times, firefly. My daughter was 4 at the art gallery and called it the art galaxy. A malapropism I wish existed. Star, sonnet, serenade. I want the mispronunciation, broken rhythm, and scratched record, survivor wisdom. A mother's prayer for her son who stayed perfectly still when she left and kissed him. Okay, and then just this last one. A lot of these first poems are very prose-like, so this is the last one of this first section. And again, thank you, everybody, and thanks, Beyond Baroque. I'm going off script. I probably shouldn't do this, but I used to want to be a game show host. So I just like to ask people to clap. So can we clap and applaud for Beyond Baroque? I mean, really. People take stuff like this for granted. You know what I mean? People take stuff like this for granted. So Beyond Baroque. Stars. Every now and then, I remember that I was born on the other side of the earth, and it makes sense that I love looking at the stars. It's such a childish thing to do, like climbing trees or stomping in mud puddles. But there's some strange pull and simple satisfaction from looking at the stars after all these years. I wonder if a man my age in Korea has the same love. I wonder how the stars relate to a gravitational likelihood that I'll tell my daughter someday about the time in our backyard, swimming in the moonlight, and the world seemed perfect. Or the time I dropped her off at her middle school in Fresno, and before I drove off, she motioned for me to stop and fogged up the window with her breath and wrote with her finger, "I love you, Dad," with a heart, and the world seemed perfect. That's what it is about the stars. Because they're so many millions of miles away and so still, the immediate chaos or confusion of our lives seems so minor. Even in the daylight, they're right there, imperceptible, but there. Something like faith or belief or the wild idea that a deep kind of joy is there for you, even if you have no idea where it is. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
One more round of applause for Lee and for all of our poets. Thank you all for coming to the Southern California Poetry Festival. We do have books for sale. All of our poets have books in the bookstore. I'm sure they'd be willing to sign them. Feel free to hang out for a little while, and see you next year. Thanks so much.